Hello, this is Robert Mansour, and we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about the timeline of the typical personal injury case. Many people are going through a personal injury case for the very first time, or perhaps it's been many years since they've experienced a personal injury matter, and in the next few minutes we'll just kind of talk about what to generally expect and how the events generally unfold. My name is Robert Mansour. I'm a lawyer in the Los Angeles area. So let's begin. The first thing that happens, of course, is the accident occurs. There's got to be an incident, a car accident, a serious injury of some sort for things to begin. There can't be a personal injury case unless there's an accident. Next, immediately after the accident, the client might receive some treatment of some kind. For example, hospital treatment. Maybe they're taken by ambulance somewhere. They're treated by certain doctors. At the emergency room, anesthesiologist, radiologist, they're sent to an imaging center. Sometimes if there's a serious injury, there's a lot of things that can occur immediately after the accident. After that, the client might find that they require further treatment. And at this point, they would discuss their options with a lawyer to find out, how they might want to proceed. Should they proceed on a lien? Should they go through their primary doctors? Should they go through their HMO, etc.? And a lien is where the doctors provide treatment to the client on a deferred basis. They will get paid at the end of the case when there is a recovery. The client, in most cases, is still on the hook for the balance, but at least they don't have to pay the doctor as they go along. And those options will be discussed with the lawyer. Now, the next thing is that the client is going to provide the lawyer with a variety of documentation requested. On my website, valencialawyer.com, on the forms page, there is a personal injury checklist. And those are the documents that I generally ask my clients to bring the first meeting, because I have to be able to review those things in order to give my client an evaluation. There are some lawyers who will just say, yeah, you'll be my client. They sign up the client. They have no idea if it's a good case, a bad case, if the client's going to be wasting their time, if the client is going to be wasting their own time. Also, they don't really care whether or not the client starts to rack up big bills that they can't pay on later. So sometimes my clients don't quite understand why I need all this information at the very beginning, but I can't give them an honest evaluation unless I review those things. So check out that checklist, and that'll be very helpful for you. Then the client meets with the lawyer, and the client might hire the lawyer. I would say 50% of the time I tell my clients they are better off without an attorney. An attorney would not bring much value to the case. Then the attorney communicates with the insurance companies and advises them of the representation and continues working with the adjuster assigned to the case. Sometimes there is an adjuster already assigned to the case. Maybe the client already spoke with an adjuster. In some cases they try to call you and talk to you. They reach out to you. There's already a claim number assigned. Sometimes the adjuster is not aware of anything and we have to open the claim for the client. But basically, after that, they stop bothering the client and they start talking to the attorney's office instead. The attorney then evaluates all the sources of payment for the client. So try to figure out, what the best way to pay for the care and the medical care is, and gives the client those options, and we go from there. The next thing that happens is the attorney's office makes sure all the important documents are gathered. And the client may be asked to assist the attorney, because here's the thing, especially with medical records, it's so much easier for our clients to get those medical records and bills. All they have to do is call the hospital, especially if they went for medical care immediately after the accident. They call the hospital and they say, hey, I want my medical records, I want my bills. They're obliged to give it to them. If it goes through the lawyer's office, we can certainly do it by way of an authorization, or we can hire a company to go out and get it, but it takes a while, and also it costs money. So in most cases, I encourage my clients to just call their doctors, especially if they've been somewhere before they came to see me, and just ask for their medical bills and their medical records. Those are two very separate things. You can't just call one department and assume they're going to provide you with both. They are two separate departments in most cases, billing and records. Sometimes the attorney might hire an investigator, especially if liability is a big issue. If there are any witnesses that need to be contacted, that's sometimes important, and it's good to preserve that testimony if you feel that that you might not be able to get it later on. And then in the meantime, the client is working with the insurance company to fix their car, to rent the car, and the attorney can kind of assist here and there. There's not much the attorney can do with respect to property damage. I mean, the insurance company is going to offer what they're going to offer. They're going to pay for whatever they're going to pay for. Most of the time I tell my clients to go ahead and handle that themselves. It's not really that difficult. And in most cases, they've already been working with a property damage adjuster to begin with. Getting the lawyer involved only adds an extra layer of discussion and slows things down in most cases. Now, sometimes you need the lawyer to be your advocate, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the lawyer can step in and try to assist you. But I also tell my clients, you know what, don't get hung up on the property damage. In other words, if you're so focused on the property damage and you're not paying attention to your health and your injuries, then you might actually be doing yourself a disservice. If you don't recover enough money on your property damage, perhaps we can make it up on your bodily injury claim. So don't lose sight of the finish line. The client documents lost earnings, if any, and seeks verification from the employer or give the attorney proper contact person. See, here's the thing. With respect to lost earnings, you just can't say, hey, insurance company, you need to pay me for 2 weeks of lost work. Well, it's good to ask your employer, for example, your HR department or payroll department, to write you a letter saying, you know what, Mr. John Smith lost 2 weeks of work due to this accident. He was being paid X dollars per hour, and he lost this many hours. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to show pay stubs from before the accident and show the loss. If the loss is not too high, you can simply assert the loss, but they'll generally want to see some documentation. The lawyer can also contact the person who's in charge and get the appropriate letter. Just make sure you give the attorney that information. The point of this slide is that you need to understand you just can't assert lost earnings in most cases. You have to have some kind of documentation, especially if you're asking for a good amount of money. During this time, the client continues treating until they are discharged from the doctor. During this time, further testing and treatment might be necessary. And here is the key. The client continues until reaching pre-accident status or otherwise reaches a plateau where no further treatment will benefit the client. Surgical intervention might be necessary. You see, here's the thing. So many of my clients, they go treat for a couple of times and then they call me and say, hey, did we settle the case yet? And I explain, well, we can't settle the case because you're not done treating. I can't present your bills until your bills are incurred. I can't present reports until they've been generated. Also, we don't even know how you're doing. What if you still need more treatment? What if there's something serious that's wrong? I can't present the case prematurely. So generally speaking, the client needs to continue their course of treatment until they reach 1, pre-accident status, or number 2, they reach a plateau where no further treatment will be necessary. And finally, number 3, they might find, if it's serious enough, that surgery is necessary, in which case they can incur the surgery or they can defer the surgery, but we need to include it in our demand. Once the client is done treating, the attorney will collect all the bills and all the reports from all the doctors, and some of them may already be collected, and the attorney might call the doctors and discuss the case with them. And then the attorney will research any liens by any health insurance company, auto insurance company, Medi Cal, MediCare, etc. Now, the attorney will work with those lien holders to settle their claims. So here's the thing. If your bills have been paid by your health insurance, or your auto insurance, or Medi Cal, or MediCare, these places, 99.9% of the time, are going to assert a lien on your case, which means they want to get repaid for whatever they paid out. Now, with Medi Cal and MediCare, it's automatic. It's a government right. With your health insurance, it's contractual. And it's the same thing with your auto insurance. It's contractual. You may not know this, but you have to repay them if you recover from a third party, from the responsible party. And the attorney will often work very closely with these entities and try to negotiate the bills. In some cases, we can get significant reductions. So that's another thing that the attorney will be doing behind the scenes. The attorney will then prepare a demand package to present to the responsible party's insurance company. So what is this? This basically contains a demand letter, which is usually 2 or 3 pages long depending on the complexity of the case, photos, medical records, bills, lost earning documentation, etc. So at this juncture, the lawyer is now ready to present a demand to the insurance company. And sometimes this takes a while because we're still busy collecting all the information, and sometimes we run into a snag. But the demand package is presented at some point to the insurance company, and then the dialogue really starts to begin with respect to settling the case. The insurance company usually takes about 30 to 45 days to respond to the demand. That's another thing my clients get stuck on. They'll call me about 2 or 3 days later after we've discussed the demand, and they'll say, "Hey, did we get a settlement offer yet?" And I try to explain to them that insurance companies generally work in 30 to 45 day increments. Keep in mind that each of these adjusters has about 200 files sitting on their desk. The attorney communicates the offer from the insurance company to the client, and then the client either accepts it or rejects it. Now, if it's rejected, the attorney continues negotiating settlement on behalf of the client, and we go back and forth like any good negotiation. The attorney then negotiates with all the parties asserting a lien on the case, doctors, insurance companies, etc., in an effort to increase the client's net recovery. We touched upon this earlier. If the offer is accepted and the number is accepted, the insurance company will then send something called a release for the lawyer to review and the client to sign. The insurance company will then send the check for the lawyer and the client to sign, and this check is deposited into the attorney's client trust account. Checks written to all after this, including the client, from this account. So basically, they're going to send us this release for us to review, and the release generally says that you're not going to go after their insured anymore, the person who caused the accident, and that you're going to accept this money. And then they'll send us a check. The client and the lawyer will sign it. It will be deposited in a trust account, which all the other checks are deposited into on all the attorney's cases in most situations. And then when the check clears, and the lawyer will then write checks to everybody involved, all the doctors, the attorney's fees, the client's portion, etc. If unable to settle the claim, the attorney will discuss options with the client, which might include filing a lawsuit and all the ramifications of doing so. I'm not a big fan of filing lawsuits. I generally think that they are unpleasant experiences, but I always talk to my clients and I talk to them about the pros and cons, and they ultimately will make the decision. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's called The Timeline of the Typical Personal Injury Case, and I hope it gave you a nice overview of what to expect. My name is Robert Mansour, and if you are a client of mine, we will certainly keep you posted as often as we can whenever there's a significant development. And these things take time, and these cases sometimes take longer than they should. Sometimes they resolve fairly quickly. But feel free to contact my office if you have any questions about this particular video or any other questions, or if I can assist you with your own personal injury case. Again, this is Robert Mansour. Thank you for watching.